Now, today is the final day for care home staff in England to receive their first dose of a coronavirus vaccine if they want to keep their job.
It comes after MPs voted in favour of requiring all care workers to be fully vaccinated by the 11th of November, unless medically exempt. But as Zoe Conway reports, the new rules have been criticised by some in the industry.
St Cecilia's need heroes.
St Cecilia's care homes are so desperate for staff, they've taken to blasting the airwaves in Scarborough with job ads.
Previous experience not essential. You just need the power to care.
You came across really well in the interview. You've got a lot.
At a local hotel, the company's just offered one lucky applicant a job on the spot. But that's not all. She'll also get £500 in cash and a meal for two at a local restaurant.
They're going to offer you a free meal for two at the Hideout. It's in Scarborough. Oh, wow.
For the recruitment team, it's hard going. The 5 of them have been here for hours. They've only managed to interview 3 people. One of the reasons why they're finding it so difficult is that the hourly wage for one of their care workers is £9.50 an hour. Some of Scarborough's restaurants are offering £11, even £12 an hour.
I just really wanted to use this opportunity to thank you, each and every one of you, for the work you've done, because I know you've worked extra long shifts over the last, well, it seems like forever, doesn't it? 18 months or so. Double shifts, long shifts, because people have been unwell and we've been short of staff.
Managing Director Mike Padgham is trying to lift his staff's spirits. Everyone in the room has been vaccinated, but other staff haven't. Under the compulsory vaccination policy, they'll lose their jobs.
Sam, what do you think about compulsory vaccination for care workers?
Well, I'm happy to have had it done, but those people who choose not to are going to lose their jobs because they're scared. Why should they have to lose their jobs? Because the care homes have to have it done and other sectors aren't. I think that part's wrong.
Staff here have been working overtime to cover for 10 unfilled posts. Now they're about to become even more stretched. This company says it's about to lose 4 of its best carers, 4 women who are refusing to be vaccinated, and so the company is going to have to let them go. The women say that they're genuinely frightened of the vaccine, frightened of possible side effects.
I have to respect what they say. They don't want me to arrange any counselling or see experts. They've made their mind up, and I think I have to respect that I cannot keep trying to persuade them. I have to give them space. I've even thought, as some providers are, oh, should we just go ahead and keep them and see what happens?
Are you really saying that you're prepared to defy the government and keep these 4 unvaccinated staff members on?
I'm considering what I might do in the future, because to my mind there's a risk of not having sufficient staff as well, but I'm not saying I'm going to do it. I'm just in my thought process at the moment.
So I shall see if I can get
St Cecilia's is hardly alone in facing a staffing crisis. Across North Yorkshire there are 1,000 care worker vacancies. The government says it's working with local authorities and providers to ensure there are the right number of staff with the skills to deliver high quality care. Zoe Conway, BBC News.
Nadra Ahmed is the chair of the National Care Association and joins us now alongside Judy Downey from the Relatives and Residents Association. Nadra, we'll start with you. We heard in Zoe's report there some staff are simply terrified of having the vaccine. Is that something you're hearing a lot of?
Yes, we are. Good morning. We're hearing that all the time. Part of the reason that they don't want to have the vaccine is that they are genuinely not only anxious but fear the vaccine, and nothing has been able to persuade them about its safety. These are people who probably don't have vaccine, they don't even have the flu vaccine, they just don't want to have a vaccine.
And what kind of conversations do you have with them when they voice those concerns? Because part of the objective now in this 12-week window is presumably to encourage the take-up to grow in that minority group. But if they've made up their mind by now, do you think it's going to change?
Well, I think it's highly unlikely that it will change, and that's why we've seen this exit from the care homes into the NHS, where they don't have to have the vaccine. And most of them, you know, we are trying to explain to them every question that's asked is answered, and we try and get all the information, all the literature. There are one-to-ones going on. We're talking to them about the impact of their decisions. We're talking to them about the whole picture of why the vaccine's important for them primarily, and how it safeguards them against this dreadful illness. But actually nothing we can say has been able to persuade them. And so they are going to exit the market. And these are experienced carers. They're people who've been working in the sector and actually supported some of the most vulnerable people when government failed them at the outset of this pandemic, when PPE wasn't available freely and providers were fighting to get that PPE, when testing was absolutely not consistent, and we were taking in people from hospitals that we were told were COVID-free and weren't. So this is the staff group who've done all of that, and they now feel that this kind of mandatory vaccination step is a step too far.
Judy, very good morning to you. You speak on behalf of relatives and residents. You can see why the government is saying they're doing this. They're saying they're doing it in the interests of safety of residents. So when you talk to residents and family members, what do they say about the predicament you're now in? The notion, as we've been described there, of not having enough staff or sacking people who won't have the vaccine?
Well, most relatives obviously want the residents, the people. These are their husbands, their partners, their parents, sometimes their siblings, and they want them to be as safe as possible. And I think for a lot of people, the vaccine seemed like a miracle that was going to help us be less vulnerable to the ghastly COVID. So I think that most residents are delighted at the idea that that they'll be visiting, and also that the homes will have a safe environment. But it does seem somewhat last minute and ill thought through, because as Nadra said, the NHS doesn't seem to have these demands, and it would be much more even-handed if everyone working with vulnerable and ill people had the same standard applied to them. That really doesn't seem to make much sense. But clearly, the more people that can be vaccinated, the more people are protected, and I think that's the bottom line for most relatives. Certainly.
Judy, can I just ask you, you may have heard in the piece we ran just before we spoke to you, one care home owner who was saying actually he genuinely didn't know whether he might defy the guidelines, the rules, and just keep staff anyway. I mean, do you think in practice, because of the shortage of people, that might actually happen?
It's really hard to calculate. One very major provider with over 200 homes, when the prospect of vaccination, compulsory vaccination, was raised, he actually told his staff that he was only in future going to employ people who'd been vaccinated, and 99% were vaccinated. Now the situation's a bit different because the economy has opened up and there's jobs in hospitality, in cafes, in restaurants, so people have more of a choice of where they're going to work. And frankly, as your piece explained, the discrepancy in pay is becoming only too stark now. And, you know, so it's not, I don't think it's just the vaccine. I think it's a way for people saying, you know, we've had enough, we've done so much, and we're not valued sufficiently. You know, the amount of money available for training care workers works out at about £8 per person per year from the government. I mean, that's just insulting. Everybody talks about the skills that are needed, but there's no mandatory training programme, and care workers who've got lots and lots of experience, maybe 20 years, will be earning something like 8p an hour more than someone who's starting straight from school. It's not an even playing field in any sense.
I would imagine you're both in agreement that working conditions and pay for care workers and training indeed needs to improve. But I want to get your take on the self-certification of exemption for the next 12 weeks. What are the possible implications of that, Nadra, when you think about how easily the virus can spread in an environment where some of the staff have not been vaccinated?
Well, I think the safest environment is where we've got all the residents vaccinated and all the staff vaccinated, and this exemption has come out at the 11th hour. This is how valued we are as a sector, so it's given us no time to actually think this through. We've been asking for it for months now, because we knew, so some staff will have left waiting for these exemptions. And it's interesting, you know, the exemptions are now, you know, one of the first things is if you're at end-of-life care. Well, if you're at end-of-life care, you're not going to be a care worker. I think there are some real anomalies here. It's quite difficult to understand how you self-certificate and how this is temporary. What it proves is that there was no plan about how this was going to be. You know, so they've mandated it, and there's been no plan until the 11th hour, where they've put something out which is temporary. And I think it's absolutely outrageous that we should be forced to now deal with this as we go forward on the day that the first dose has to be taken, and we see people who will have already left the industry. And I feel completely lost for words on this one, because why has it taken this long to work out what the exemptions might be? We've been telling people who are waiting to maybe start a family that it's all quite safe, and now actually maybe they can self-exempt.
Very difficult. Nadra Ahmed, Chair of the National Care Association, many thanks, and Judy Downey, Chair of Relatives and Residents Association. Thanks for your time this morning.